It's funny, well, funny in that way where you can only laugh or lose your mind. But sometimes the sound of karma is less thunderous and more like an expensive stiletto shoe getting swallowed by mud. That's what kicked it off for me. There I was, standing on my porch with a mug of coffee, already feeling like the day was out to test me, when I heard that wet sucking noise. A $1,200 pair of shoes gone in the muck. And the woman attached to them, Eleanor Sterling, president of the Oakwood Heights Homeowners Association, a lady who treated the Geneva Convention like it was some mild suggestion. She was standing ankle deep on my shoreline, absolutely losing her mind. And, honestly, I couldn't help but grin a little. If you'd been there, you would have seen the three charter buses behind her, idling and coughing up diesel fumes, offloading about 40 strangers who thought they were about to enjoy a public park. Except, well, they weren't. They were trespassing, and they had no idea they just waded into the middle of a war built on a promise I made to a dead man. Yeah, I know how that sounds dramatic, right? But stick with me. If you've ever been bullied or watched someone stomp on something that matters, you'll get it. Eleanor was shrieking, really shrieking, like a bird that just flew into a window, calling me selfish a relic. Her voice actually cracked under the weight of her own entitlement, which was impressive in a train wreck kind of way. But see, she made the classic mistake she thought because I was quiet, I must be weak. Figured I was just a retired electrician who liked to keep to himself, didn't know how to handle a fight. Never stripped a live wire in my life. She didn't know that silence for some of us is just the calm before the storm. If you want to understand why a 52-year-old man would go to the mattresses over a patch of water, you've got to know about the land. The sweat and history buried under every inch of this 40 acres. My grandpa Silas bought it back in '62 when it was just scrub and hope. 15 years he worked that land dug, that 8-acre spring-fed lake by hand. Every plank of the dock, every groove in the wood, that was all him. We carved our initials into the old oak tree by the water, which, by the way, is still standing. That's the heartbeat of this place. I'm Arthur Vance, by the way, if we're making introductions. Spent 3 decades of my life working high voltage industrial repair. Not the kind of job where you can afford to ignore warning signs. If you smell smoke, you don't just wave it away. You find the circuit, kill the power, and save the building from burning down. That's how I see life too. When I sold my business and came back home, all I wanted was peace. The smell of pine needles running my hands over that old dock, remembering Grandpa Silas teaching me what it means to take care of something. But then came the Oakwood Heights development, 50-ish McMansions popping up around my borders like some kind of rich people fungus. Folks thought lakefront living was just a thing you buy, not something you build with your own hands. It was fine at first, well, fine in the way you say fine when you mean tolerable. Neighbors waved with one hand and checked their property lines with the other. Then Eleanor moved in. She had the whole LA real estate attorney thing going on, big white SUV, always gleaming. I'm not kidding, she washed it more than most people call their mothers. 6 months in, she bullied her way into HO. A president ran the place like a private kingdom. Policed garbage cans, paint colors, the works. But I wasn't part of her fiefdom. My deed predated the HOA. I never signed her rules. The lake was mine, end of story. At least I thought so. Then, she marched over to my fence with this fake friendly smile. One of those predator grins that never hits the eyes, saying my lake was a mosquito factory, ruining her property values. Demanded I install a $15,000 filtration system, as if I was the new money around here. I tried to explain nice as I could that spring-fed water doesn't stagnate. She might as well have plugged her ears. And that's when things flipped. In her mind, I was no longer a neighbor, just an obstacle. The harassment started within 2 days, anonymous tips to the county health department, water inspectors showing up at sunrise, apologizing for wasting my time. Mr. Vance, whoever reported this, has to be blind or lying. Yeah, Tell me something I don't know. But, Eleanor, she wasn't looking for truth. She wanted to wear me down. She stood over the inspector like a prison warden, demanding second opinions. Her face turning this terrifying red when the science didn't back her up. That same afternoon, she escalated. Sent me a letter thick with legal jargon, referencing agreements I knew for a fact didn't exist. Here's the thing, though. Electricians were trained to sniff out the break in the line. I knew she was hiding something. So I started digging. Not in the ground, into the data. Hours at the county clerk's office tracing Eleanor's history, and sure enough, I found the first crack. Her California law license was under review for, let's just say, misrepresentation. A liar with a diploma. That's when I started fortifying. 4K security cameras, cloud backups, new signs on my property line, legal wording, and all. Turned my place into a mini fortress. But nothing surprised me more than the phone call 3 days later from Inspector Miller, who whispered that Eleanor had tried to slip him $2,000 to falsify the water report. That's a felony. Suddenly, this wasn't just about neighborhood squabbles anymore. This was real crime, creeping in slow. I sat on my dock that night watching the sun go down, feeling Grandpa Silas with me. I realized Eleanor wasn't just trying to hassle me, she wanted to erase me. I pulled up property values, and there it was. Every house within a mile was up except hers. She was underwater, maxed out second mortgage, home equity line, stretched to snapping. If she could open my lake to community access, her property would jump 20% overnight, enough to save herself. She was trying to steal a legacy to pay her debts. Her next move, pure theater. She called a last-minute town hall at the fancy neighborhood clubhouse. Of course, I wasn't invited. But Mrs. Higgins, my 78-year-old neighbor, with a backbone of titanium, tipped me off. I crashed. The meeting walked in just as Eleanor was putting up a fake fishing agreement from 1955, complete with forged signatures, fake GPS coordinates. I didn't yell, just hooked up my phone and put the real documents on her projector. Photos of Grandpa building the lake, original surveys, the works, pointed out her forgeries with the calm of a guy who's been here before. You could hear a pin drop. Eleanor went white as a sheet. But did she back down? Not a chance. She hissed about court injunctions promised to bury me in paperwork. And she did. Next morning, I got hit with the full legal onslaught of a surveyor named Bob Jenkins, with a truck held together by duct tape claiming my lake belonged to the Watershed Trust. His map had the lake floating somewhere in the fourth dimension, I swear. And the trespassers came. Strangers invited by Eleanor, who thought she could establish a new status quo. Fancy city folks in pristine fishing gear, dragging coolers across my lawn, quoting her made-up legal nonsense. I met them with trespass notices, photographed plates, and my personal favorite, activated my sprinkler system perfectly aimed at the center of the dock. You should have seen those grown men in $300 vests run. Sometimes the little victories are the sweetest. But I wasn't just playing defense. I hired Diana West, a forensic surveyor, who nearly cried laughing at Bob Jenkins's map. She wrote a report that politely called him an idiot. I knew Eleanor was desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. That's when I caught her at the records office trying to pitch my land to a developer saying she'd force a sale by driving my value down. She owed California almost $400,000 in taxes, and if she couldn't close this scam in 60 days, she'd lose everything. That's when it clicked for me. Eleanor was a predator in a trap of her own making, chewing through anything or anyone to escape. I realized I couldn't just win. I had to end it. So I built my own little army. Mrs. Higgins, who knew every bit of gossip for 40 years. My grandson Leo, a drone pilot who could film a mosquito from half a mile up. Ethan Cole, an investigative journalist who smelled blood in the water. and Olivia Reed, a property rights attorney with a taste for RICO statutes. We needed a trap Eleanor couldn't resist, so I announced a huge Veterans Memorial fishing tournament. We posted felony trespass warnings coordinated with local news, hid cameras everywhere. The morning of the event, the lake was perfect until Eleanor rolled up in her SUV buses, full of investors behind her. She marched onto my properties, waving fake injunctions, guiding tours, promising condos to men in suits. Leo's drone caught everything. Ethan's news crew filmed the chaos. After about 20 minutes, I gave the signal to Detective Mike Henderson, old friend of mine who'd been fishing nearby. He flashed his badge. Eleanor tried to talk her way out, but every answer dug her deeper. She called me mentally unstable, admitted her whole plan on a police body cam. Mike cleared the trespassers out. Eleanor realized, probably for the first time, she'd confessed to real estate fraud in front of a cop and half the neighborhood. But, you know, a cornered animal is always dangerous. Eleanor went on the attack. Flyers showed up on every doorstep that I was violent, unstable, stockpiling weapons. She reported me to the VA, tried to get my disability benefits pulled, called my old clients, trashed my reputation in one day. It hurt, I'll admit. The looks I got from people who used to wave, they stung. But what Eleanor didn't know, Olivia, my lawyer, was building a RICO case. She needed one last piece. Eleanor delivered like she always did, with more arrogance than sense. She reached out to Councilwoman Baker, thought she'd buy her off to push an eminent domain order. But the councilwoman was already working with the FBI. Leo hid nearby with a mic. The dinner was wild. Eleanor offered $25,000 in cash, laid out her whole playbook, even admitted the plan to have me committed. She had no idea the waiters were federal agents. She strutted straight to the HOA Chang that night, planning her grand finale. The place was packed. She got up in her fancy suit, ran a PowerPoint painting of me as the next Unabomber fake police reports, doctored photos, even brought in her star witness, a so-called psychiatrist who turned out to be her brother-in-law. I waited until he finished his diagnosis of me paranoid violent, you name it. Then I stood up, walked to the front, unplugged her laptop, and put mine in. First slide. Eleanor's unpaid taxes, $387,000. Second slide, her bar record fraud charges. Third slide, her doctor's real employment, unemployed actor, petty theft. Eleanor tried to run, but Mrs. Higgins and two neighbors blocked her. I hit play on the audio from the Gilded Lily. Her voice clear as day, spelling out the whole crime. The room was silent. You could feel reality tilt for 200 people realizing they'd all been played. Then the doors slammed open. FBI agents came in. No knock, no warning. Eleanor got cuffed right there, marched out past everyone she'd lied to. She glared at me, and I just raised my coffee in a silent toast. That's closure. Aftermath. Eleanor pled guilty to 14 federal counts, 10 years in prison, lost everything. Her brother-in-law got 4 years. The whole HOA board quit in disgrace. Mrs. Higgins got elected president, and they rewrote the rules to enshrine property rights. But you know what really closed the book for me? 6 months later, sitting on my dock with Leo, watching disabled veterans fish off a new platform built with the settlement money. The air smelled of barbecue, not diesel, and stress. My reputation came back. My property value shot up, but mostly peace returned to the lake. We started a scholarship fund in Grandpa's name, turning the legacy Eleanor tried to steal into a future for kids who care about the land. She tried to destroy a legacy for greed. She ended up cementing it forever. Makes you think, though, about justice, about power. Did I do the right thing letting her go so far, letting her dig her own grave? Or is that what you have to do with bullies? Give them enough rope? I don't know. Eleanor's in a cell now. I'm here listening to families laugh, feeling the sun set behind those trees. Justice, like electricity, always finds the path of least resistance, right to the truth. So, what about you? If someone tried to gaslight a whole town to steal your family's history, what would you do? Ever face a bully with too much power? Tell me what you'd have done differently or what you wish you'd done back when it mattered.